So this year, my neighbor introduced me to the process of making your own maple syrup. Never knew that was even a thing, but apparently he's been doing it for years. He's been using some of the maple trees on his property, and he even does a couple walnut trees, and you can make walnut syrup. So the process is pretty simple, and I'm going to show you how. So if you do a little research, you're going to find out that there's all kinds of varieties of maple trees, with some producing better syrup than others. On my property, I have one lone maple tree, and it's called a Norway maple, and that's a good candidate for a good quality production. Maple syrup season happens from about March to April here in Pennsylvania, New Jersey area. That's when the nighttime temperatures drop way below freezing, and then during the day it warms up to way above freezing. And the bigger the gap between those temperatures, the more sap you're going to be able to collect. So you're going to need to get a spile, and a spile is basically just a little tube. It's a tap that you put into your tree. If you go on Amazon, you'll find all different types of spiles. They're pretty inexpensive. So what I did is I took a cordless drill, I drilled a hole into the tree at a slight upward angle. It helps to get the sap flowing out. Just tap it in with a hammer so it holds tight, and then you're going to want to connect some sort of a collection device. I'm using a plastic tube running into a 2.5 gallon jug. But you can use a bucket, you can hang a bucket right off the spile. Pretty simple setup. So on some of the really good days where it got down like into the 20s at night and then way up into the 40s or even up to 50 degrees during the day, those were the really good days to collect a lot of sap. So the sap, when it comes right out of the tree, it looks just like water. It's clean, clear. If you taste it, it's got a slight sweetness to it, but other than that, it's just kind of water. After a couple days of collection, and I had a couple jugs filled with the sap, if I started with about 3 gallons, I would boil it down till it was about maybe 2 cups, 3 cups worth of liquid that came out. Some people call it nerup. It's not quite syrup yet. It's a lot sweeter than it was before, but it's not truly syrup yet. There's still too much water in there. I do my boiling outside because you're going to be kicking off a lot of steam. And if you do this inside a house, like on your stove, your whole kitchen's going to be wet. At this point, the nerup is already starting to change color and is starting to get closer to the amber color. It's not quite syrup yet, but we're getting there. I also used an old t-shirt that I cut up and attached it to the top of this pitcher with a rubber band to catch anything like little sticks or twigs or debris that had fallen into the pot when it was boiling or when it had been collecting. The other thing is, as the sap boils, you'll get what's called sugar sand, which is a lot of the nutrients that's in that water that kind of crystallizes when it heats up. It's not something that'll hurt you, it just doesn't look real pretty in your bottles of syrup. So I actually go through the filtering process a couple of times. Once it was boiled down into a smaller amount, I put it back into the pitcher and hold on to it for a couple days until I had a chance to, again, boil down more syrup until that pitcher got closer to full. Then when I got to that point, I could bring it inside for finishing off. I would pour that into a pot on the stove, and this time I can have more of a control over the heat. While you're boiling it on the stove, you may notice it start to bubble up, and this is a tip I picked up. Take a little bit of butter and put it on the outside of the pot, and that'll keep the bubbles from coming up over the edges of the pot. And what I'm looking for is to boil that all the way down until it reaches the magic number of 219 degrees. At 219 degrees, you know that the water has boiled out and what you're left with is syrup. It's kind of odd because when it reaches 219 degrees, the bubbles start changing. They get bigger and thicker, and you'll notice the viscosity changes to a thicker, and now at that point is when you actually have maple syrup. It comes off the stove, gets filtered one last time through the same t-shirt that I had washed and cleaned out, and then you're ready to bottle. Now the ratio of sap to syrup is about 40 to 1. So it would take 40 gallons of sap to make 1 gallon of syrup. I didn't really keep track of exactly how many gallons I got out of the tree, but I can tell you I ended up with about 5 or 6 8-ounce bottles of maple syrup. Now this is my first year doing this, and there's much larger scale productions. I've only got one tree, I'm just one guy. I'm sure there's some mistakes I made along the way, but it's definitely something I want to try again next year. But it was a lot of fun, and the syrup is amazing. Nothing beats fresh maple syrup. Anyway, If it's something you might be considering trying, hopefully you got something out of this video. Thanks for checking it out.